What is up, Pack-A-Day members? Welcome into our members-only Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all the support and for being members. Excited to get to all of your wonderful questions. It looks like we have a bunch in chat already, so I'm really excited to get to all of those today. Of course, we're going to be doing this all off season long, despite the fact that we don't have anything crazy coming up over the course of the next 5 weeks or so. I do have a vacation coming up in a couple weeks, so that might be 1 week. Well, that will be 1 week where I have off, but otherwise we will continue our members Q&As throughout the summer. And like I said, very much looking forward to that. But I have about an hour here today. If it goes a little bit longer, that's okay. But we'll get to as many questions as we can. We'll kick things off with John Kramer. Came in at 1:39 p.m. and asked, what's your best guess on the Packers contract restructure offer? Assuming we mean for Jaire Alexander here. So if I know Jaire Alexander's dad was on, I believe, ESPN Milwaukee today and said that if Jaire Alexander was given the same contract that he got with the Ravens, that he would still be in Green Bay. I don't necessarily believe him or not believe him. I have no idea on how this probably went. My gut feel on this is that he's probably telling the truth. And my gut feel on this is that I don't think the Packers really had any interest in bringing back Jaire Alexander. I think the more that we sort of peel back the layers of this, I think they were just done. I think they were the ones that were ready to move on in this situation. I think Jaire was willing to stay, probably willing to renegotiate in some way. Maybe he's right in saying that, meaning Jaire's dad, that he was right in saying that they would have still been here. That's a tough situation when you're at $17.5 million to not let him see the open market and say, we're going to give you $4 million plus $2 million in incentives. Take it or leave. Like, my guess is he and his agent probably say, well, we'd rather see the open market in that situation. I also don't think Green Bay probably did offer that contract. Again, I think they were just ready to move on. And if you heard Brian Gutekunst on with Aaron Nagler today on Packers transplants, you just kind of got that feel as well from Brian again, as he talked about it. And I said in like December or January, I thought all along this was best for both sides. It's not a Packers versus Jaire thing. I thought the Packers were going to be probably in a better position and just kind of smart to go in a different direction. As Brian kind of said a couple weeks ago, they've tried this for 4 years now, basically, to continue to get him big money and go out there, and he just hasn't been able to stay out there consistently. I think from that standpoint, it was smart for Green Bay to move on. And it was definitely, I think, great for Jaire to get a fresh coat of paint as well. And Brian said that almost verbatim today on Packers transplants with Aaron and Corey. So I just think that whatever they offered, it was probably, vet minimum with maybe a couple incentives. Even if they did, I just don't think they had any real interest in bringing him back, to be honest. That's my guess. I don't know that for sure. Not reporting on it, but if my hunch is they were ready to move on. And I think it was best for both sides. Chicken, your 18th birthday tomorrow, and all I want is to see my team win a Super Bowl for the first time in my conscious life. Would you say the odds are 50-50 or 0.00001% that happened? I would say it's closer to 0.0001%, I guess, that they just winning a Super Bowl this year. Probably the better odds is that, but then a 50% chance, that's quite the chance to win the Super Bowl. But listen, I'm really excited for this upcoming season. I do think they're going to have the opportunity to go out and compete at a high level. Excited to see how they kind of round out this roster through the rest of the offseason. I'm not even necessarily saying I'm expecting anything big to happen, but just who's in the 53 and what it kind of ultimately looks like for that first game against Detroit, what Jordan looks like this upcoming year. I think it's going to be a really fun year. So I cannot promise you a Super Bowl, Chicken, but happy 18th birthday in advance. And I can hope to give you, or at least the news that it should be, I think, a very, very fun season this upcoming year. But best of luck with your Super Bowl quest. And I think we're all right there with you. We all, whether it's our 18th, 40th, 70th, anything in between or outside, I think we're all hoping for that Super Bowl sooner rather than later. That's quite the spelling of Vinatieri, though, Chicken. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board on that one. Besides Adam Vinatieri, will we ever see a specialist make it to the Hall of Fame ever again? Current players who could, in my opinion, are Steven Gostkowski, Thomas Morstead, and Matt Prater. I do not expect any of those three to rise to the level of Hall of Famer, if I'm being honest. Devin Hester got in, right? I think he's in the Hall of Fame, right? I I don't think so. And not anyone in the current situation. Justin Tucker was maybe trending that way. Obviously, that's very much in doubt at the moment with all the stuff that's going on there. He was maybe trending in that direction, but for the time being, I don't think I could name a punter, kicker, or long snapper or returner that is set to be on that trajectory at the moment. Could it happen again? Absolutely. Brandon Aubrey would be maybe the one. That dude continues to hit like 60 yarders and stuff and just doesn't miss. That could be one that potentially gets in that conversation, but he'd have to do it from a longevity standpoint and just continue to crush kicks for a very long period of time. He'd be the only one at the moment where I'm like, if things break right, he could probably be in that conversation. For the first time since, I don't know, when we released a player and they were petty and go to another NFC North team. So refreshing. Yes. So thankfully, Jaire did not end up with Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, anywhere in the NFC is great. So I do think when it happens immediately, it does scream petty, right? I think sometimes, the NFC North teams know these Packer players very, very well because they study them a lot for, in the off seasons during whatever stuff. Like, I do think there's a level of knowing these players really, really well when they're in the division. And I do think sometimes it's just the best offer that you get. It wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Jones' best offer this past couple of years was in Minnesota. If that was his best offer, maybe it screams petty on the onset or like just as you're looking at it, but it could have legitimately just been the best offer that he got too. So it's always tough to tell. Is it, because that the NFC North teams are willing to pay a little bit more because they're familiar with the player and they've scouted them and watched them and are excited to get them into their building? Maybe. Or is it just that the player wants to go somewhere? Clearly, in this case, it sounds like Jaire did not take the best offer available to him, but wanted to go play with Lamar and in Baltimore. I think it's a good fit for him, and we'll see what he can do there. But I do think that that's a great landing spot for Jaire. I like the idea of signing Jalen Ramsey too. Would you give him a 2-year, $35 million contract, including $12 million signing bonus, $10 million first-year salary, and a $5 million roster bonus at the start of the 2026 league year? John, it would all depend on how much guaranteed was in that the second year of that contract, and if I could mostly get out of it if I wanted to. I'm mostly only interested in a 1-year deal. If it's a 1-year deal and then like a fake second-year deal where it basically acts as a team option, sure, I'm willing to do that. But for the most part, I'm looking at like 1 year, $14-15 million for Ramsey. Again, if it defaults to that where you cut him next year and you basically got him for $15 million over the first year and then end up cutting him next year, that's fine. I can do that as well. But at the end of the day, what I'm hoping for is like a 1 year, $15 million deal, somewhere in that range, maybe even a little bit less. If you can get that, I'm all in. If not, then I think you have to think about it a little bit harder. Happy Wednesday, Andy. Is it crazy that Jaire and Stokes receive the same amount of guaranteed money? I'm really shocked at the contract. It is simultaneously stunning and not stunning, kind of all rolled into one. How do I want to say this? Playing matters. Like, you have to get out there and you have to show that you can make it through a regular season. One of the things we talked about all off season with Jaire is this was not a 1 or 2 year thing for Jaire where it's like, oh, he's had a string of bad luck. This was a 4-year period of time for Jaire where he played 50% of the snaps in 4 seasons. Your value just goes down. It's not super stunning that he got kind of the Tre'Davious White deal, a deal that you're a little bit, on the, whether we want to call it the downside or just a little bit older, and you haven't been able to stay healthy, but you're a really talented player. Sort of the going rate. Even if you're older, but you're out there a lot, Darius Slay is an example of this. You're getting 1 year, $10 million. If Jaire is just able to go out there and play, I mean, there's no way he's getting paid less than Darius Slay is at 1 year, $10 million this past year. But he can't. He hasn't. And no matter what way you slice it, we talked about it how many times that you're making investments into players and you have to try to get the most return on investment that you can. At $17.5 million, it was a complete non-starter. It was never going to be anywhere in that realm because you were never going to be able to get the investment that you wanted or the return on the investment that you were putting into Jaire Alexander in that situation. For the Ravens, this sort of makes sense. So think of it this way. Jaire is worth, if you think about it, like look at the players this offseason that got, significant deals, right? A healthy Jaire is worth a $17 million contract per year. And we saw that for the type of players that were able to go out and get those $16 and $17 million contracts at corner this offseason. So if you look at it this way, if Jaire had just been healthy, that $17.5 million probably doesn't look bad, right? If he's consistently healthy and always playing it. So he's worth about $1 million per game. The thing is, you have no idea how many games you're going to get out of him. And the Baltimore Ravens are now getting him. But what they're thinking is like, hey, we're basically only paying for 4 to 6 games of Jaire Alexander. If he plays 4 games, he's not going to get any of his incentives. You paid him $4 million and you paid him $1 million per game. You basically got what he is worth. And if he plays like 8 games, he's going to get right around $8 million, and you're going to basically get what he is worth. And if he plays 16 or 17 games, he's going to get, that if he plays 8 games, he's probably going to get about $5 million, and you get a pretty good steal on him. If he ultimately plays 17 games, well, you've only paid him $6 million. You've got great return on investment. But they've basically figured out a way that, like, if he only plays 4 games, they basically still break even on this entire deal. So it's a great deal for them. And for that reason, though, it's why his contract's so low, is just because you cannot bank on him getting any sort of games above like 6, 7, 8 games, just because he hasn't shown that he can do that. Now, Eric Stokes has not exactly been the bastion of health either, and somebody that you would point to in that regard. But I'm more surprised that Stokes got as much as he did than that I'm surprised that Jaire got as little as he did, if I'm being honest. Is Bo Melton closer to Trevor Davis or Matthew Slater? And is Hardman closer to Nixon or Sammy Watkins? Comes in, he has a good camp, then nothing in the regular season, or comes in as a punt returner and does very well. I don't know the answer to that exactly, Chicken. I think if Melton can pick up the cornerback spot to some extent, and he makes the 53-man roster, I think he will give them a good, solid number 5 or 6 wide receiver, a potential number 6 corner, and somebody who can go out and play on the 4 main coverage or 4 main special teams units. However you want to equate that, I don't think Green Bay's ever had a player quite like that, so I don't know exactly who to compare him to. But it's a fun story right now. But of course, for Bo Melton, that's just going to be, can he continue to be a good enough wide receiver, a good enough special teams player, and an interesting enough defensive back to make it onto the 53-man roster? And if so, then it's a much more fun story, and we'll see what he can do on an active 48-man roster, being able to have all of those different sort of golf clubs in his bag. How do half-speed practices work? How can guys compete and still only go half speed? Won't competition lead to guys just going faster and harder? Every once in a while, John, that does take place where, and Matt talked about this the other day, where sometimes a guy will start going 60 or 70% when you're supposed to go half, 50% or whatever. And it looks a little bit different. And, he has to try to go and, get everyone to get slowed down and on the same pace. What you're looking for, and it depends on what type of activities they're doing. Some activities are pure walkthrough. So we're just literally walking through it. That's it, right? So just a pure walkthrough. After that, there are like periods that are like 50% pace. So it's not necessarily walk through pace, but you're kind of going through it at like almost like a jog through pace. And usually the goal of those is more mental reps. It's not to be, competing physically. It's to see you're showing the coaches that you're in the right place at the right time and kind of jogging through it. And again, not exactly competing, right? And then you get to reps that are a little bit quicker. And then you get ultimately to like 7-on-7 or the 2-minute drills where it's close to 100%. But it just depends what the coaches are trying to accomplish in that given drill. I think sometimes the walkthroughs are tough because you get those mental reps, but you really sort of lose that juice in practice because now everyone's just kind of going through motions and you're not letting your body really get going, and you kind of lose some of that energy of practice. So they try to ramp it up, I think, a little bit, kind of keep that mojo going, but not have it be a competitive period. So it just, again, depends really on what you're trying to accomplish. And yes, sometimes you will see somebody going 60% and another person going 80, and it looks different. And then, the coaches will usually try to calm down that player that's maybe going, 10, 12, 15% too much more than they should be. And, just try to get everyone on the same pace. But it's a tough thing to do because everyone's like 60% might feel a little bit different. Right. But yeah, it just is what it is. It's the modern NFL. You're trying to accomplish your goals without making it so that guys get hurt. And I think they're trying to do the best that they can with that in mind, of trying to, again, keep that mojo going in practice, accomplish what you want to accomplish, get the mental reps, and not get anyone hurt. That's kind of the goal of the entire situation. NFL coaching staffs have quality control coaches to do the grunt work in scouting opponents and drawing up game plans. If you had a quality control coach for Pack-A-Day, what would you have them do? Upload, edit. Those would be the big things. Like, just take care of so like for me, I would just research and then hit record, and then I would be able to hand off everything else. So, and the funny thing is like, that would be a pretty easy thing to hire for, right? Like, I could hire theoretically an intern to upload everything, edit everything, and post it and all those sort of things. The issue is that I do a lot of my work at 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m, 2 a.m. So those things aren't ready until way later. And then, they need to be up by like 5 a.m. So there's not a huge window there, for people to potentially do that stuff. I also like there is actually like an oddly weird or just an odd amount of stuff that goes into it, and making sure that everything's perfect and that the ads are right and all those sort of things as well. So it's just kind of one of those things that I continue to do on my own for now. At some point, maybe I'll look at a way to do some of that stuff a little bit differently, but for now it just works. And but that would definitely be the stuff I would love to get off my plate. I love doing the research. I love just jumping on and being able to talk Packers, but all the other stuff, the uploading, the editing, that stuff gets to be a grind for sure. Because it's not just uploading on YouTube or whatever. Like, you have to edit the audio show, edit the video. You also then have to edit the other audio shows from the other people that are on the podcast. To some extent, some of them come edited, but sometimes just getting the ads in and stuff like that. But then you have to upload the audio podcast both to the audio channel, upload the YouTube video to YouTube. You have to then upload everything over to Packer Report because we post on there every day. You have to upload to Cheesehead TV because we post there every day. And it just becomes a lot every single day with that sort of stuff. Good question, though. I love this team, but I need to vent. All right, let's vent, Landon. I get not wanting to pay Jaire $17.5 million, but when he goes to Baltimore for $6 million, it really frustrates me. He has been here for 7 years and made it clear this is where he wants to be. Also, Brian said he wants urgency, but yet we let him walk for $6 million. Whereas, where's the big swings from Brian? He has yet to make a big trade to help this team. I just want us to build the best roster we can. And I feel like Brian takes his back seat and lets deals and players go when he should 100% pull the trigger. My first answer to you, Landon, would be Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, Aaron Banks, Nate Hobbs is a very significant 2-year investment into outside of the team talent. I mean, I would challenge you to find many teams that have 4 bigger, and there will be some, no question. I mean, the Bears, I'm sure, are probably in that conversation. There's a couple others, but challenge you to find a team that is spent on 4 free agents like Green Bay has with Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, Aaron Banks, and Nate Hobbs over a 2-year period of time. I mean, if you go back to Zadarius Preston, Adrian Amos, and Billy Turner, I mean, they didn't do much in that year after because they spent so much in 1 year. That's a similar 2-year, investment period where they just signed all 4 of them in 1 year, then didn't do much the following year after that. This is just 2 players 1 year, 2 the next. And then you also add in like a McCole Hardman and Isaiah Simmons in there as well. That is not an insignificant investment in outside players coming to your organization. Not only that, but they hit 2 complete home runs in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, quite arguably the 2 best players on the entire team they just brought in a year ago. And your mileage may vary on how they spent the money this year. If you thought Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs were the best ways to spend that money, in outside free agent spending this year, Green Bay, I believe, was in the top 10 in what they went out and spent on those 2 players. Now, as far as the Jaire situation goes, my personal belief is that they were never really super interested in bringing back Jaire, and they ultimately came to the conclusion that they cannot trust him to go out there and play, even if it is a $6 million contract, that they were not going to get the return on investment on that $6 million. And so they went in a different direction, and they went out and got Nate Hobbs on a very expensive contract. And you might say, Andy, Nate Hobbs is a replacement for Eric Stokes. Maybe that is true to some extent. I think, quite frankly, he's a replacement for both. If you add up the snaps that you get for Jaire and Eric Stokes, it's usually what Nate Hobbs plays in a year, quite frankly. So I think you're basically replacing both. I think the Keyshawn Nixon deal at corner is a phenomenal deal that they have already. Carrington Valentine's on a rookie contract, and they trust those three players. I think this has less to do with the monetary, stuff with Jaire, and more of just, did they want him back? And I think the truth of the matter is they were done with that relationship, with that contract, and they were ready to move on. I don't think there was ever a world. I joked on social media today. I think my 0.01% actually ended up being too high. I just don't think it was ever going to happen. So they ultimately made that determination, I think, pretty early on, that they were kind of out of the Jaire Alexander business. I think hey, yeah, we would love to have him back, we're going to, renegotiate his contract stuff. I think that was one last ditch effort to see if anyone was going to call and try to trade for him. And as soon as that didn't happen, they released him. I can understand, would I have, if it is true that you could have had him at $4 million plus 2 years, plus $2 million incentives, would I have brought him back? Yeah, absolutely. I certainly would have. We don't know that that's the case. First of all, I know Jaire's dad said it was the case, but we still don't know 100% if they would have actually done that. Sometimes some things get lost in translation or whatever, but we don't know that 100% for sure. And I can also understand the assessment and the sentiment from Green Bay that it was just time for everyone to move on. As far as outside of that, and I get we all see, oh my God, look at, they have 30, 40 million to spend or whatever. It's great. And again, we talked about Jalen Ramsey this week, or going out and doing something like that. And by the way, maybe they still will. But you do have to remember that does come with a cost in the long term. And it's great to have that 1 year player now. If you were to sign Jalen Ramsey to a 1 year, however many $1 million contract, but if that costs you a significant player that you could sign to an extension next year because you spent that $16 million on Jalen Ramsey, you are, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul to some real extent. And so it's all resources. You have to weigh it out and figure out the best way to utilize those resources. And as far as they never make a big trade, they've never done it while I've been in, I think trades you have to be very careful on. And I actually am a pretty big believer in Brian Gutekunst's philosophy when it comes to trades. Let me put it this way. In most situations, there's always an exception to the rule. But so let's say they're going to give Trey Hendrickson, give me just 1 second. I want to pull up something really quick here. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. Let's say that they were going to give Trey Hendrickson. Let's assume that he costs a 4-year, $120 million deal at least. I think he's going to get at least $30 million per year. Okay. So let's say he's a 4-year, $120 million deal. And let's say probably at best case scenario, you get him for a 2nd round pick. I think it might cost a little bit more than that, but let's say you get him for a 2nd round pick. All right. 4 years, $120 million, and a 2nd round pick for Trey Hendrickson. Certainly, it may not sound like the worst deal in the world. And quite frankly, if you told me that Gutekunst did that deal, I'd be like, sweet, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't hate it. I would probably be fairly excited for it, to be honest. But I think in general, how I view those situations is everything's a resource and everything is a trade-off. So 4 years, $120 million. Green Bay could have went out and spent that in addition in free agency to just go out and sign players, right? That's a significant investment just in monetary investment in and of itself. They could have had Milton Williams for 4 years, $104 million, who is much younger and very talented and coming into his own as a pass rusher in the prime of his career, still had an additional $16 million to spend, and still had their 2nd round pick. They could have signed Josh Sweat to 4 years, $76 million, saving almost $50 million in the process, and still had their second round pick. I mean, heck, you could have got both, basically Josh Sweat and Chase Young at 4 years, $120 million, and still had a second round pick that they could have used on another pass rusher if they wanted to. So what you have to recognize is you are using multiple huge assets to go and get one player who, by the way, is 30 years old, over 30 years old. And what can happen, I'm not saying it would or, whatever, but you go and spend $120 million on Trey Hendrickson, plus use a second round pick to go get him, which, by the way, that second round pick is pure gold, because if you can get a Jaden Reed or a player like that, right? A big time second, an Edgerrin Cooper that has a 4-year, like $5 million deal, making $1.25 million per year over a 4-year period of time. Those are literally like the best contracts you can get pretty much in football, unless of course you can get it in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, but you get my point. You're getting usually a super talented player on a massively cheap deal. You're trading away a liquid gold asset in a second round pick, plus giving away $120 million that you could have just went and got any free agent that you wanted. I don't think there was a free agent that was signed. Let me see if there's anyone, period. No. It would, like, if you give him 4 years, $120 million, it's more than any player went for in free agency. Milton Williams was the highest at $104 million. So you could have had any free agent that you wanted in free agency for that price, plus still had your second round pick instead of just getting a Trey Hendrickson. So the entire cost, and what I was going with that is, if all of a sudden he gets to camp or week 1 of the regular season, pops an Achilles, now you have all of that investment into one player. That could have been, again, Chase Young and Josh Sweat and a second round pick. However you want to spend that money, it's a really tough thing to do. I'm not saying that there isn't sometimes a time and a place for it. I'm not saying that it can't be utilized, but you have to be very careful with it. Same thing with like a DK Metcalf, right? When you're giving up a second round pick and a huge contract that you can get for that type of player, I would rather go spend the money the way that I want to spend it, keep my draft pick, and advance the team in that direction that way. So I think more often than not, you're usually better off selling players than you are buying players in the trade market. And that's how we've seen Goody operate, by trading away players like Rasul Douglas, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and not really utilizing it other than like a 7th round pick for Malik Willis. I am a believer in that philosophy. I think that's the right philosophy to live by. And I think that's why you do it that way. And again, in the meantime, you go out and spend money on Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney and Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks in a very significant way over a 2-year period of time. So vent away. By no means am I saying what Goody is doing is perfect or infallible, or that he cannot have mistakes, or that he couldn't do things to increase this team a little bit more incrementally and just, again, trying to push the envelope. If you're looking for another way to vent or look at this in a different way, he said today on Packers Transplants that their goal is always a long-term approach, and that they want to be in the tournament and competing in the playoffs every single year, and that he doesn't believe in windows, that there's a window of opportunity to go win with a specific team. I vehemently disagree with that. I think you have to look at it more often than not, then you have a window open and you need to go for it when you have the opportunity. And I think not taking those opportunities can be extremely detrimental, because every year there are going to be 5 or 6 teams that are all in, super aggressive, and trying to smash open a window to try to win a championship. And it's really tough to compete. If you're never willing to do that, it's tough to compete with those 5 or 6 teams that have the open window, are aggressively going for that open window and throwing all the resources that they can to win in that particular year. And the only one of those 5 may be able to be successful, but then the next year there's going to be another 5, and the following year there might be another 5, and it's not going to be the same 5 every year. And Green Bay might be in the tournament every year competing against those different 5, but never maybe to the level that those other teams are. And I think that's how you get to a 30-year period of time where, yes, you hit the jackpot twice. Nobody's apologizing for it, but you've only been there 3 times. You won it twice in those 3. And it's been literally since 1998, you've only been there 1 time. And again, nobody's apologizing for that 1 time or that win, but since 1998 now, which is a pretty significant period of time at this point, we're almost 30 years with only 1 Super Bowl appearance. And I get a lot of teams would give a lot for that 1 Super Bowl appearance and Super Bowl win. but I do think that there is a need to have a little bit more of that approach. Just the last thing to wrap this up. What I would argue is, even though I do believe that to be the case, I don't believe Green Bay is quite there yet, where they need to throw all of their chips in the middle to say this is the time and this is the place. I don't think they're quite there yet. And I think they have an extremely competitive team right now as is. And if you get to the end of training camp or the trade deadline and there's some opportunities there that can improve your team, awesome. You look at them, or even now, if you want to look at a Ramsey or something like that that might become available, sure, go for it. But I think what Goody has also done is left open the opportunity to do some of those things if the time and the place and the price is right for some of those free agents. So just know, Landon, that this is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And also know that the teams that throw all this money around, go back and look at what the Titans did last year. Go back and look at what the Bears have done in their big free agency spending periods. Look at the ultimate one, the Philadelphia Eagles dream team, where they went and signed every big time free agent. Those things usually don't end well either. There is no perfect 1A formula. Your best formula is to have Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, even Josh freaking Allen, quite arguably the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Can't even sniff a Super Bowl at this point. I mean, sniff is maybe aggressive, but you get my point. Like, it is just a very, very difficult thing to do. And there's no perfect formula for doing it. Overall, I think Goody's doing a really good job. Some things he can change, sure. But I don't think there's anything that you're pointing to right now that I would necessarily say is a major problem or a major issue. I don't think his evaluation of Jaire is wrong. And I don't necessarily think that I don't think that he's not spending. I think those 4 big free agents in the last 2 years have been a pretty big indicator that they are being aggressive. And every time he has had money to spend, he has spent it. So maybe to some extent you could argue right now that they have that money left over, but we also know what's coming around the corner with a lot of these really young players needing some contracts coming up in the very near future, including a mega contract in all likelihood for Zach Tom. Would I have offered the contract to Jaire that he got in Baltimore? Again, I think, yes, I probably would have. I don't hate the idea that they decided it was time to move on. And as I've said all offseason, I think it was probably best for both sides just to kind of go in a different direction for a variety of different reasons. But in general, yes, if I were Green Bay, I probably would have offered that same contract structure. I'm betting that similar to Aaron Jones, the Packers offered a contract similar to what Ja 23 took in Baltimore, but it was time for a new page for both sides. Glad he went to the AFC so I can still cheer for him. Love that take, John. What would you say a successful stat line would be for LVN? I don't know that it's going to be box score based go pack. I guess pressures is probably what I would look at. I want him. What did he have last year? Let me just double check it real quick here. He had 20 total pressures this past year. I mean, honestly, I want to see that in like the 50s. I mean, you can't have 20 pressures. He played in he played 458 snaps, 256 of those were as a pass rusher. I need to see that. I need to see that at least in the 40s. I want to see him get in the 40s at least in pressures this upcoming year. So he needs to at least double his total pressures this upcoming season. That's where I need him to be. So I need that to go from about somewhere in the 20s. In fact, it was 20 to at least 40, if not like 45, 48, somewhere in that range. And quite frankly, I'd love it in the 50s, but I'll say he at least needs to double his pressures this upcoming year. Good stat line from Golden. Nothing anything like, 45, 50 catches for like 600 to 700 yards, 5-6 touchdowns. I think for Golden, I mean, the stats are going to matter, but I think just the feel that we have for Golden too. Are we seeing some of the spectacular stuff? Are we seeing him able to win downfield? Are we seeing him fit very seamlessly within the offense? I think that one is almost going to be more of a feel. And even if he gets himself a little bit behind the Romeo Dobbs, the Dontavian Wickses, the Jaden Reeds, and, at times, and maybe just Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs, just because of how many weapons there are on the offense, maybe the stat line doesn't look as good. I think that can be okay if when you see him out there, you're like, okay, this kid is legit. He's going to be really good. You can see it. You're just going to need a little bit more experience, a little bit more time. So I think that one is more of a little bit of a feel thing, but I would love him to be, what did Greg Jennings have as a rookie? Like to see him at least in that sort of realm. Jennings as a rookie was 45, 632, 3 touchdowns. I think that's a perfect just baseline. Now he had a really poor efficiency rate, Jennings did, because he had 104 targets that first year, only caught 45 passes. So his efficiency was down. But barring that, like let's say he gets like 75 targets. I think that'd be a great place for him to be in his rookie season. Can you explain the difference between injured reserve and physically unable to perform? Yes, although I do get them stuck in my head every once in a while. So first of all, PUP list is the one where you can bring them back after, and so these rules have changed now. So I have to actually go back and usually look at them each year to get the exact thing. But the PUP list is something that you are going to put them on. There's the active PUP and then the inactive PUP list. And the inactive, these are always ones that I have to look up again as we get to like the training camp time. The active PUP list, they still count for the 90-man roster, and they're on the PUP to start the offseason. You have to have them on the starting PUP list in order to put them on. You can't like put them on the PUP list at any time that you want. So when we get to training camp, anyone that's physically unable to perform, meaning they can't go out and practice, will be placed on the physically unable to perform active list, meaning that as soon as they are cleared or as soon as they are able to practice again, you bring them off the PUP list. They still count towards the 90 or 91 man roster for the time being. And as soon as they're cleared, you bring them back on. If they have spent the entire training camp in preseason on the physically unable to perform list, then you are able to put them on the physically unable to perform list to start the season. And then they miss the first, is it 4 games or 6? I think it used to be 6, but now it's 4. I could have that switched, but you miss a certain amount of games at least. And then once they're ready, you can open up a window for them to come back on, and then they can go from there and actually practice. So, or actually get back in the games and so on and so forth. So that's the physically unable to perform list. Injured reserve is the one where, you can place them on it at any time. However, then they're going to be done for the year. I think there may be an exception now to it. I forget if they passed the rule or not, but they're going to be done for the year. Usually if you put it on it prior to the start of the regular season. I think maybe you get 1 or 2 of those now that you can do prior to the start of like the cut down time or whatever. But from there, once you get to the active regular season, you put them on IR. They need to be out, I think, again, at least 4 weeks. And then you have so many IR spots that you can call back through the course of the year. Or again, if they are just done for the year, you put them on IR and then never bring them back or whatever. So differences in rules between the two. Again, I need a little bit of a refresher because it usually is this time of year as we get to camp where I start looking those up again. And like I said, I used to know them like the back of my hand, but because of some changes in how they have done those rules, it's starting in COVID and then going through it, I always have to look them up now. But those are kind of the main differences between the two. Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk indicated that policy will not give an extension to Goody and LaFleur before the season and doesn't believe in lame ducks. So it seems like there may be some pressure on the season. Yeah, he also said that they were, what did he say, exceptional at their jobs, and it was Rust Ball as well. Talked about that a little bit on today's show as well. I think this story is completely much ado about nothing. I think it's a complete nothing burger. My guess is very much this is how Green Bay handles these contracts, similarly to how they handle player contracts, where usually if you have 2 years left on your deal, they're not renegotiating those or looking at those. Once you get to the end of this year, you're going to have 1 year left, which again, they don't want to go into those lame duck years. So they will extend those. There's no world in which Russ Ball, Brian Gutekunst, or Matt LaFleur are on the hot seat at the moment. I think it's a good thing in general that with Ed Policy taking over, he has this next year to evaluate everything on his own accord, see how everything's going, see if there's anything that's broken. I'm assuming that there's probably not. If there is, he has the ability to course correct it. And assuming everything goes well this year, I would expect Goody, Russ Ball, and Matt LaFleur all to be in line for contract extensions this upcoming offseason. And I think it would take something pretty catastrophic in order for that not to be the case. And hopefully we are not talking about that, because that would make for a very not fun 2025, 2026 season. So assuming we get the competitive Packers team that we're all expecting this upcoming year, I would expect contract extensions for all parties involved coming up this next offseason. You keep talking about trading Egbari. I think that might be a little aggressive. I think I've talked about it maybe 2 or 3 times, but I get your point. What 3 teams do you think are top of the trade partner list? I'd have to go through, honestly, Shane, and look at some teams that probably need pass rushers, but most teams do need pass rushers to some extent, right? I'd honestly have to go through each one by one to see who potentially makes sense. Looks like, a couple of these teams are probably set at the moment. Again, it would literally just take me going through each one. But I think here's the thing. I don't think any team's really trading for Enigbari to be a starting defensive end or a pass rusher. And I think just about every team can use another fourth or fifth, edge rusher, right? So if some team saw the value, or if they were really desperate and needed him as a 3 or maybe even as a 2, because he has started in the past, I do think some team would be willing to throw a 7th round pick at him, or a conditional type of pick. So I do think that value is there. What team that would be, your guess is probably as good as mine, Shane. Again, I'd have to go through and look at which teams were maybe the most shallow at those positions. All right. Don't forget to hit like. Appreciate that, John. I was 8 when the Packers won it all in 2010, but watched sports yet. Began watching the following year because of it. Are us who started watching in 2011 the most pained fans of a good franchise of all time? It's definitely been a little bit of a tough run. At least you get like good football, right? So I will say that, but you've definitely been a little bit cursed from the standpoint of having some really tough, heartbreaking playoff losses. I don't know. I'd have to look at like all sports to look at it, but you're certainly not in a great group of disappointing playoff finishes, to say the least. Don't you think that if the NFL was scripted, Barron Sorrell would be headed for a Hall of Fame career? It would certainly be a good start to it, a good story, that's for sure. I don't know if Hall of Fame, but it's a great way to start it off. But it would be a great story if you went from in that green room, drafted in Green Bay to Hall of Famer. Sure, why not? Big Bay Blue, sign me up for Hall of Famer Barron Sorrell. All right, we did that one. How about go and get Rasul Douglas? Aaron, you must have missed today's episode because we went over this. Rasul Douglas's tape was terrible this past year. He had 10 penalties, gave up multiple touchdowns. Where's my notes from yesterday? Let's see. Three touchdowns, no interceptions, 10 penalties, a passer rating of 116.9. And while I would normally not tell you to box score scout those things, go back and watch the tape. And I think the tape is actually worse. He looked a step and a half slower. His technique was bad. It was really, really, really ugly tape. And I love Rasul. And even with that being the case, I like, a part of me is almost still like, yeah, sure, why not? He had that nice run in Green Bay, but it looked really, really bad last year. So I am not for the Rasul signing, to say the least. Why do you think so many fans want to start trading players as soon as the Packers get any kind of depth? One injury at wide receiver, offensive tackle, or edge, and the Packers will need guys like Dobbs, Walker, and Enigbari. Dobbs and Walker, I am very much in the camp of keep. I understand that, in certain situations, you want to see if maybe you can trade from an area of strength for an area of weakness. I think a lot of people are saying more of like, hey, trade Rasheed Walker for a corner or something like that. I'm not trading any offensive linemen. That is a too perilous position that you cannot find during the season. Like, you just cannot find those guys. So there's no way I am touching offensive line depth. I think Romeo's looked really good so far. He seems to be in awesome spirits. He and Jordan definitely have a connection. And if you trade Romeo, you all of a sudden have a situation where Watson's not back yet. And yes, you have Reed and Wicks, but now you're kind of your next two are rookies, right? And you just lose a lot of that depth really, really quick. So I have no interest in trading Dobbs. Enigbari is different to me in the fact that, quite frankly, I'm not a huge Enigbari guy. I don't think he brings that much to the table. I do think, again, he probably has some trade value throughout the league because he has started and played quite a bit, and defensive ends are just tough to find. But I legitimately would put LVN, Rashawn Gary, Barron Sorrell, Colin Oliver, Brenton Cox all on the field ahead of him. And I honestly don't think the difference between Enigbari and Aaron Mosby at your 6th is all that much different. And you'll be able to get Mosby back in the practice squad. So if I can save $3 million on Enigbari, pick up a 7th round pick, and basically just put Aaron Mosby in that same spot, plus Mosby gives me a better special teamer as well, I'm all in on that type of deal. So in general, I agree with you, Big Bay Blue, but for Enigbari, I'm much more willing to bite that bullet, especially with the $3 million salary this upcoming year. Hey, Andy, been a while since I was able to make a live Q&A. Love the off-season content. I listen every day when I hit the gym. Makes the gym session fly by. Go Pack. I'll have to try that, Joey, sometimes. Maybe you can give me some tips. I've been trying to get a lot more steps in as of late. That's what I've been doing this off-season to try to, stay a little bit more in shape at least. But yeah, definitely could probably use a gym regiment as well. But happy that you're listening to Pack a Day while doing it, and glad that it makes it go a little bit easier. I was mistaken. Stokes had 3 million guaranteed. Cordero Patterson should have a shot at the Hall of Fame. Very comparable to Hester with a Super Bowl ring. I would not put Patterson quite in that category. I love Cordero Patterson, but I would not quite put him in the Hall of Fame category. It wouldn't stun me if he got like some nominations or whatever. It was like, I don't even think he necessarily gets in the finalists. Maybe with 1 or 2 more huge years as a returner, he could get his name in that conversation. I do think he's probably the best kick returner of the last 20 years or so. But I do think Hester was still a little bit different and more unique than what Patterson was. And yes, Stokes was 3 million guaranteed, a little bit different than what Jaire got. While covering the Packers, have you seen or heard something that the Packers requested you and other media not to write or report on? The answer is yes. The answer is also lame in the fact that it's not anything that you would think is like juicy or sexy or anything that's of any importance. These usually happen at like training camp. I honestly, it's so irrelevant that I don't even remember what it was. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I don't know if it was like a specific period that they ran or something like that. It was something massively not important, whatever it was. But every once in a while, there will be something that they like basically just say, hey, we don't want anyone like reporting on this like thing. And again, if it was of any importance or whatever, you know, it would be a story maybe, but like there's no story there, if that makes any sense. So much so that again, I would tell you, I like that the statute of limitations would have expired by now. If I could remember it, I would honestly tell you what it was. I don't even remember what it was. That's how boring and lame it was. So there's never been anything that I have wanted to be like, oh my God, I wish I could tweet this out. I wish I could tweet this out. Other than those, I think during COVID, there were like certain practices where we weren't able to tweet out anything, which really sucked. Or like we couldn't tweet out formations or like who was lining up with the ones. That was awful and brutal and really stupid and dumb, and I hated it. But outside of that, there hasn't been anything of note or importance. Yes, going on vacation to Spain in a couple weeks. So next week I'm going to be recording a lot of content in advance for all of you who are members. You're about to get bombarded in the next week with about double the episodes. Even though I think I'm going to be recording one, maybe even 1 or 2 this week. So I know some members have told me in the past that they have very poor self-control and they just start listening to all of those right away. And then they have a week without content. So just pace yourself a little bit as members because in 2 weeks I will be away in Spain and just getting some rest and relaxation and recharging the batteries a little bit. But I will have content for you every single day. But as you guys as members will get all of those early, just know that you're going to see a lot of content coming out over the course of the next week and a half here. Excellent question. Kenny Clark's brother messaged me a few months back because of a comment I made about cutting him in 2026. And he mentioned the surgery, but apparently that was not public knowledge. Yeah, that's we learned obviously more about the injury from Kenny Clark as of late. That's for sure. Between Marshawn and Savion Williams, which talented third-round offensive weapon has the better chance to reach his potential? Tucker Kraft. No, I'm just kidding. I'll say Marshawn, but I think both of them are absolute studs, and it just is dependent upon if they can reach their ceilings or not. I think both of them are just chock full of talent. I think if both reach their ceiling, I think Savion Williams is a massive home run hit if they both reach their ceilings. And I'll go with Savion Williams. I think Marshawn Lloyd is probably a little bit easier path to reaching his ceiling. But yeah, I'll say Marshawn, but if Williams hits it, it'll be Williams by a mile. I'm a nobody, so it was weird to see that message from him. Those things happen. Trust me, a lot of Packers and family members and people adjacent to players are out there and looking at everything social media related. So that stuff definitely happens from time to time. Bonus question. Thank you guys, my balls itch and Mike McGee for the super chats, by the way. Bonus question. Do you know if Favre was invited to the draft in Green Bay, or is he public relations kryptonite? I do not know. Don't know if he was invited and declined, or don't know if he was just not invited at all. Couldn't tell you. I have not heard anything one way or the other on that. It is the off season, so Superman, Fantastic Four, or both. I think both look like hot garbage, if I'm being honest, and yet for some reason am really excited to watch Superman. I am definitely somebody that enjoys the superhero genre that lives in more of the world of reality. I think the three Christopher Nolan Batman, especially like Batman Begins, I thought just did such a great job of that. And even of course I don't know, why can't I think of the name of the one with Heath Ledger in it now as Joker? Yeah, you guys know which one I'm talking about, though. I think those did such an unbelievable job. I thought the early Marvel stuff was really based so much more in reality, and then they like added layers to it as time went on. But that's usually more my cup of tea. I think both look not great at all, and yet for some reason I'm really excited to take my kids to the Superman movie. So I think it's going to suck wholeheartedly, but I'm also kind of, I don't know, I'm just intrigued. I'll say this. The Superman movie just looks fun to me. I think, and usually, again, that's not my cup of tea. I don't usually like those. It just kind of looks fun, and I'm excited to see it. And it's either going to be a train wreck or it's just going to be a really fun, wild ride that is maybe a little campy and ridiculous, but is just enjoyable along the way. And I'm hoping for the latter, but neither would surprise me. So I'm not expecting anything from either, but for some reason, I'm very excited to watch Superman. How come players who can't stay healthy with the Packers leave in free agency and instantly play 14 plus games? Should we be investigating team doctors and why that's the case? That has nothing to do with team doctors, in my opinion, Chicken. That's just unfortunate, good old fashioned Packer luck, I guess. But I also wonder if that's the case or if it just feels that way. I don't know. I'd have to do a study on it, but I don't think it has anything to do with the training staff or the doctors. The Hendrickson hypothetical, forget it. Meaning that him coming to Green Bay, yeah, I definitely do not see that happening. McCole Hardman has had a pretty good start. Who do you think makes the roster between Hardman, Melton, and Heath after OTAs? My most recent 53, I had Melton and Hardman on it. I do think Hardman, as like you said, is off to a great start, and I think he has that pathway as a potential punt returner as well. So I'll say Hardman at the moment, but I think that's going to be a hell of a battle. And if you told me that any of the three made it or any of the three got cut, none of it would surprise me. And I think that's going to be, like I said, a heavyweight fight in camp just for any of those guys to try to make the team because of the presence of each other. I did not see the Ed Policy interview on McCarron yet. It is on my to-do list. I have not had the chance to watch it yet. Tucker Kraft was one of the top tight ends last year. Where do you see this group this year with Luke in the mix? Luke looks good so far. I talked about this a little bit the other day. I've said in the past, I think Luke just needs to slow down a little bit. Not from necessarily a speed standpoint, but he just looks like that baby giraffe that's learning to run or is running on ice or something. It just looks a little bit odd at time. I just think he needs to calm himself and just play within himself. And I think when he plays it within himself, you're actually going to see him play with all of that speed. So I think we're seeing that. I think the game is slowing down for him a little bit. I think he's slowing down, just being a little bit more calm and in the moment. And I think now you're starting to see those natural traits take over because he's slowing down and playing with a little bit more confidence. That's all going to be great and fine right now. That needs to carry over into training camp in the regular season, and he needs to stay healthy. But so far from what I've seen from Luke this offseason, I've liked what I've seen, and hopefully, like I said, that does carry over moving forward. But if it does, you could have a very, very fun 2 tight end set in Green Bay with that 12 personnel group of Kraft and Musgrave moving forward. With the weaker quarterback class, offensive rookie of the year is up for grabs. I hope Golden goes out and grabs it. I do too. That'd be great. But what I will say is it would be very, very fun, very fun if Travis Hunter won both offensive and defensive rookie of the year. That would be pretty baller. So yes, from a Packers standpoint, I am all in. Give me Matthew Golden on offense. Heck, give me Baron Sorrell on defense. I'll take any of it, but it would be pretty sweet if Travis Hunter went out and won offensive and defensive rookie of the years. Back to what I said earlier, I don't mean he does not spend money. I love the players he signed. I just think I know waiting for his big trade move and a move midseason that can really help the team. Yeah, we kind of went over that, obviously, but trades are really tough. And in fact, again, I'm more on the side of try not to make those more often if you can avoid it. Like when I look back to a few years ago when we could have had Odell and we let him go to the Rams and he helped them win a Super Bowl. They tried to sign Odell. He wanted to go to the Rams instead. And remember, they couldn't offer more money because there was offset language. So the whoever cut him, I forget, was it the Giants that just cut him? I don't remember who it was. But whoever cut him was paying him anyway. So there was no team that was going to be able to give him more money than what he was already making. So it was literally just what team he wanted to go to, and he chose the Rams. They could have traded for him before that, but then they're stuck with that contract, which was not worthy of Odell Beckham at that point in time. So again, there's always layers to this that you have to be cognizant of. They wanted Odell, And unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers' ability to attract some of those players was, I think, a little bit overblown at times. But no, it's not even just an Aaron thing. Just he wanted to go to the Rams, and he apparently made the right choice. But yeah, that's the situation. They couldn't have really done anything differently to get Odell in that situation. Our receiver room could have used the help. As a fan, I just hope that when the time is right, he is not scared to make a move like that and just fold. I don't think that is ever in Brian Gutekunst's DNA, to be honest. Policy is a rookie, not to be taken seriously for a couple of years. I disagree with that. He's the president and CEO of the team. I very much take him seriously. So whether he's a rookie or not, he is going to have a major say in some of the stuff that happens at 1265. So I'll be paying very close attention to anything that he does, especially as a rookie, because those will be his first moves as president and CEO of the Packers. So I think it's very important to see what he does. I was 3 when they won it all. I've always watched the Packers, but don't remember the Super Bowl. I feel cursed, just crushing loss after crushing loss. They're just getting you ready for the real world, Beast Bumblebee. No, hopefully soon, right around the bend, we can have a Packers Super Bowl win, so you guys know what it feels like. It's pretty freaking amazing. I will tell you that, but I'm very much anxiously awaiting another, as well as I think is everyone here in chat today. Very random question. In hindsight, how would you grade the Billy Turner signing? Yeah, it was fine. I was not a huge fan of that signing when they did it. I thought he was definitely the weakest of the 4, which of course they paid him the least of the 4. And that was one where I didn't have a whole lot of faith for him going into the situation. I think he actually probably outperformed my expectation a little bit, even if he maybe underperformed the contract a little bit. But I do think the fact that he was a serviceable starting offensive lineman that could play left tackle, left guard, right guard, I think for the most part, they probably got their value out of that deal. I was never a big Billy Turner guy in general, but I don't have a huge issue with that contract in hindsight. And I think for the most part, offensive linemen are tough to find. I think for the most part, they probably got solid value out of it. Maybe overpaid a little bit, but not by a ton, and not one that you're looking back at and being like, oh my God, can you believe they did that? I think it was fine. I agree that the Fantastic Four and Superman look like garbage. I'm kind of interested in watching Fantastic Four, though. I'm sure I'll watch it as well. I don't know, for some reason. And I hate the DC universe, by the way. Like, I mean, not in general. Some of the Batman stuff, like I was born on the Batman the Animated Series. Like, that is still, like, you go watch that today. It is some of the single best superhero stuff that has ever existed in the history of time. You can go and watch that. It is aged phenomenally. It is so freaking good. So I love the DC universe in general. The DC universe, the movie universe, is really, really bad in my opinion. But I don't know, for some reason, I'm just looking forward to watching. I think it maybe just going to a dumb, mindless Superman movie in the middle of summer just kind of feels right. That I don't have to do a ton of thinking. And like, I love the connected universe of Marvel, but we're almost to a point now where I got to think back of like what happened in WandaVision for stuff. And I'm just like, just going and not having to think and just enjoying stupid superhero stuff in a bizarro Superman movie that's got a flying dog and everything. Like, I don't know. It just sounds kind of fun at the moment. James Gunn doesn't disappoint. The new trailer makes it look very good. Much better than the first few. Hopefully it is. Micah Robinson is winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. Bookmark it. That would be amazing. I would love that. Andy, please enjoy yourself on vacation. Thanks for everything you do. Glad to be part of the community. Go Pack Go. Appreciate you, Daryl. And Anthony Belton is winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Beast Bumblebee, if Anthony Belton wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, I will gift you my season tickets. All right. I will bestow them upon you. You will be the new owner of Packers season tickets if Anthony Belton wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. So we'll make that happen somehow. All right. I think I got to everything. I think I got to all of our super chats. Thank you again to Mike McGee and my balls itch for doing those super chats. Appreciate you guys a ton. Made it just about an hour. Got through everyone's questions. I think we're about perfect. Anthony Belton does have some work to do. All right. That's going to wrap us up for today. I'll be back next week for members only Q&A for sure. I'll be back for happy hour this upcoming Friday. Hope to see you guys there. Tomorrow's episode, I think, is going to be, I'm just finishing up grading all of the snaps from Isaiah Simmons from this past year, looking at some really fun stuff and kind of going over his tape as well as going over my grade for him. So looking forward to that. I think that's going to be tomorrow's episode, but things could change. You never quite know, but look forward to that. But until next time, and as always, you guys stay safe. And of course, go Pack Go.